All right. Well, welcome back to another Future Focused weekly update. This is for December 29th, 2023. We are almost at the end of the year. And I know I said I may not do these the last couple of weeks of the year, but there was so much fun doing the first two. I thought I would continue doing this. And I'll just be sharing some reflections and thoughts on some of the latest things I'm thinking about and watching in kind of tech, again, at the intersection of business, technology, and the human experience. So today, the three things I'm going to talk about, and again, this is going to be more short form. I'm going to hit this high and quick. Hopefully, just a little bit of a news digest, if you will, of what's going on. The three things I'm going to talk about today is the rise of employees working two jobs. I'm going to talk about digital twinning for training and operational excellence. And I'm also going to hit on the kind of basically farewell to generic generative AI and a hello to custom AI bots as we come into 2024. So those are the three I'm going to hit on today. Hopefully it'll be quick and I will get through it as quickly as possible to just kind of share what this is. If you're not familiar, so the first one, if you have not been following some of the workplace trends right now, there is a lot of talk about this rise with remote work and all of this in employees who are now working two full-time jobs. And in the executive conversations in HR organizations, there's some rising concerns about this. There's worry about, well, what if we have employees who are paying for full-time work and they're actually holding two jobs? And actually, this is one of the factors that, interestingly, in a lot of companies is driving such aggressive return to work policies, which I actually think is really, really unfortunate. Because people have spoken. As far as I'm concerned, the past few years have shown that people have spoken and they want flexibility, whether that means working from home or just greater flexibility to navigate what they need to do for work around their lives. And granted, I understand that looks very different depending on the kinds of jobs that you work. But I do believe flexibility is available to anyone, albeit just in different ways. So I think it's really unfortunate that in response to a fear, and maybe there is some rising trends in people working two jobs, companies are responding to that by saying, well, maybe if we just force them to come into the office, we can fix this. And I just think it's so unfortunate because it's a solution, it's an attempted solution at the wrong problem. I think I'm saying that right. But again, this idea that you can control people by forcing them to come into an office and somehow police them. And this will be a topic I'll probably talk about in 2024 is kind of this employee monitoring, but I'm not going to get into that now. But this idea that we need to control people because if we don't, they're going to work two jobs. Now, I personally will just say right now, I cannot imagine having full-time commitments to two different organizations. But I have no doubt that there are people who can and can manage that. And quite frankly, a lot of people look at the content I create and the other things I do and they go, well, I mean, you put a lot of time and energy into that. And they're right. I've figured out how to make that work with my schedule. I do it around different things and it works for me. So I actually, as a leader, and I wish more leaders had this attitude of, listen, if as long as we are clear on what is needed from you, what you do with your time outside of this is not my business, unless you want it to be. If you want to share with me, if you want to have conversations about this, go ahead. But ultimately, we don't police whether people are involved in coaching their kids' soccer teams or attending chess meets or doing this and that. I just think it's really disappointing to hear organizations having such a negative response to, and I honestly would question how many people are legitimately holding two full-time jobs. If you're out there and you have comments or you know people that you can feel free to agree to disagree with me on this one. But I just honestly think this is not probably as big of a problem as organizations think. And again, if we are not being clear with employees on what's expected of them, what we need from them, and they have the capability and the time to hold two full-time jobs, I really struggle to understand what the big problem with this is. Now, I will say I've been in enough executive conversations to know that there are attitudes on all sides of this, but I tend to really fall in that camp of be clear on what you need for your people, hold them accountable to that, pay them what you think is deserving and what is market value for what you're expecting from them. And then what they choose to do outside of that is really not something we should be stressing ourselves out about. And you know what? If people are not living up to the expectations, if they're doing too much and not being able to balance it, then address that from a performance and accountability standpoint. Stop trying to put these ridiculous policies in place to try and police and force people out of it. So for leaders, I would just encourage you, if you are on that camp of, I just can't imagine my people doing this. I mean, chances are they're probably not having two full-time jobs, but why are you so concerned with how they're spending their time as long as they're delivering on what you need from them? And this idea that they may have time to do other things makes you uncomfortable. I think you need to maybe wrestle with that. So just continue setting clear expectations. And you know what? If you have guidelines for your employees, that's okay. If you know there are certain things you need from them, make that clear and leave it up to them to figure out if they can do things around that. But gosh, please, leaders out there, do not try and make people's lives difficult because you're afraid of how they're spending their time, especially if they're delivering. And if they aren't delivering, then have that conversation. I don't know. The fact I just am hearing more and more about this trend just irks the snot out of me. Now, for employees who may be considering picking up a side hustle, or honestly, maybe not even a side hustle, a hobby, you want to do more with content creation, you want to do more with your family, you want to be involved in this and that, especially if it's work, I would say tread carefully just because of how polarizing I've seen this with leaders. While I would be a leader that anybody who's ever worked for me has known they can openly talk to me about the kinds of things they do, and I'm not threatened by it so long as they're delivering. And that's totally fine. Not every leader is. And so I would caution others who may be considering this. You may need to tread carefully around your leader. I get that. You may need to check if there's a formal policy. The last thing you want is to have something come up and your leader somehow finds a way to use some policy in place and exploits it and gets you fired over something that really has nothing. And it's unfortunate. I hate that it happens, but again, it's worth looking into. For those who may be experimenting with this kind of stuff, make sure you have your own equipment. And biggest thing, just from an integrity standpoint, make sure you're delivering on your commitments. If you are full-time employed by an employer, you need to be delivering on the commitments to that organization. And so while I may have a very open policy when it comes to being a leader and what my people spend their time doing outside of the work that is expected of them from me, I do hold a high bar of integrity of, if the things outside of what you're doing are conflicting and holding you back from being able to achieve what is needed from an employer who is paying you for a full-time job, then that is a problem that you need to figure out. And you need to figure out how to take care of those other things, because that would be something. And I would be someone where I would say, hey, people on my team, if you need to do different things, if you have these other things going on, I'm totally fine with that. If it becomes a performance issue, I'm not fine with that. And that would be something that would lead to performance management potentially. I have in the past had people exited from my team but it wasn't because I was threatened or the fact they were doing this. It was because they couldn't manage the two and they refused to let go of that. So just some food for thought. And I hope to see this trend just go away. And I hope that that can happen by us just having a more open recognition that people are people. They need flexibility. They need these things. And there's just more we can do. So that's one of the things on my mind this week, coming out of Christmas and all of this other stuff. Why? I don't know. Maybe it's just been irking me and I've had a little more time to think about it than I normally do. So the next one, though, looking at this one, is digital twinning. For those of you who may not be familiar with this concept of a digital twin, to me, I'm really excited about this. I've been doing digital twin work for quite a while. Big fan of it. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's essentially making a digital copy of your real environment. Now, the two primary use cases for this are for training, because you can create experiential learning by creating a 3D environment, a 3D world where people can experientially go around and learn things and kind of do this in the environment. And I've used this before in many learning initiatives where The environment is a key component of the learning experience. Knowing where things are, knowing what kinds of things you can expect to see, things you might encounter. So you have that contextual information. Digital twinning is a really good way to do that. And one thing that's really powerful about it is getting so much easier to create digital twins. The ability to get a cheap 360 camera, get a software like Treatise, and be able to create a 3D environment that's an identical duplicate of another 3D environment that people would need to have, that can then be accessed not just from hardware, from a wearable. You don't need to just have a wearable device on your face to be able to experience this. You can do this on mobile and desktop. Super, super fast, powerful tool. I've been a big fan of it for a long time, and I anticipate, we're going to see a lot more of this in 2024, but not just for training. And this is where the injection of AI, I think, is really going to accelerate this, is take training out of the mix. Is it great for experiential training where you can put people in, quickly give them some contextual environmental things, and they can learn things in that environment? Yes, it's great. But one of the other things that it's fantastic for, especially partnered with AI, is if you can capture and create a 3D environment, you can manipulate that environment in the digital realm and then see what is the impact to overall process flow, to operational flow, things like this. So an example of how we used to do this analog, I knew some folks at McDonald's and was involved at McDonald's with some of their innovation works, where they did innovative work and they had an environment where they would set up an innovation lab and they may reconfigure the whole kitchen. And then they would look to see, okay, how quickly can we run things through this? And did we improve efficiency and things like that? You can imagine how time consuming and resource intensive it is to legitimately set up a real kitchen, break it apart, reassemble it, and then run things through. Versus with digital twinning, you can create a digital replica of this. Then with AI, you can manipulate this and simulate different test cases to see, hey, if we made this change, this is huge for manufacturing. And what if we made this change to the assembly line? How would that affect our output or our throughput through this type of a thing? This is huge, in my opinion. And the fact it's gaining steam and traction is really exciting to me, especially because I'm a big fan and have been of immersive technology and its potential. And I feel like it just continues to struggle to get some juice in the tank, enough to get it adopted. And I actually think the rise of digital twins, which I've seen a lot of articles about digital twins recently and their use in training and operations, I personally think this could be a legitimate introduction for the mainstream to immersive technology, because of the fact it doesn't have those limiting factors like a wearable device necessarily. How quickly and inexpensively it really solves a legitimate business problem. Even for training, you think about, well, we send people to this environment so they can experience it. Well, if you can create a digital copy of that environment, give people the opportunity to navigate around it, be able to experience it, maybe not exactly how they would without the immersive hardware, but still much better than, say, a static picture of something, and be able to actually interact with the environment. A solid digital twin can actually have interactive elements and things like that that you can do with. So I think this is extremely powerful. Now, a couple things for people who hear this may be getting excited. Couple considerations. On the training side, you got to consider if you're using it for the right situation. This can be one of those flash in the pan. Wouldn't it be so cool if we could have people taking e-learning while they're wandering around, office environment? Well, that's probably not adding value. You really need to think about, where is the environment, the X factor for the learning component? Where is that contextual component of the environment really going to make a big difference? I think one of the other things that I'm really thinking about and considering with this, as it's picking up, and as I talk to people about it and they get excited and are ready to charge forward, is I anticipate, like with many technologies, you really have to be careful overestimating what you can learn from theories and simulations based on how it works in practice. And I do think that is one of the things that really is powerful when I've experienced traditional not digital twin, but kind of that, like I described, the innovation lab where you're deconstructing and reconstructing and actually using real people and running things through, is it does give you a much more real to life idea of how well this works. Now, the thing I think that's great about it, and this is where I think for the simulation from an operations standpoint, it's so powerful, is the fact that instead of just doing these really rudimentary experiments and going, well, that was a ton of time and it turned out it went nowhere. I think what the AI and digital twinning is going to let us do is say, hey, now we can be more focused and only do the actual analog break apart reconstruction changes when we think there is more than enough evidence to show a notable difference. Where before you had to do the whole thing and it just was not scalable to do for just any, hey, what if we did this? Ugh, we're not going to tear apart the whole innovation lab for this one cockamamie idea. Well, on the digital twin, you can do it pretty low risk, use AI to analyze, and you might be surprised. So I think this is going to open up a lot of opportunity for more experimentation, more possibilities for how we can say, hey, what if? And instead of going, well, we're not going to be able to test that, it'd be too expensive, not cost effective, we can actually say, hey, so I'm really excited to see digital twinning moving up, not just because I think it's a great way for immersive tech to gain a stronger foothold, but I think there's so much power for improving operations, encouraging experimentation. And again, let's not overlook the opportunity for experiential learning and giving people more contextual learning opportunities. All right, last but not least for this week, wanted to talk about what I've kind of tagged as the farewell to generic AI, generative AI, which we got lots of this year, and hello to the custom AI bots. So we have seen so much advancement since November of 2022 in the generative AI space. As we've looked at the different transformer models stand up as they've advanced, we've moved into image generation. Then most recently, OpenAI released their custom GPTs. I think we are going to see so much more focus in that area of the rise of the really, really customized, tailored AI bots. Because going back to the conversation I had with Kevin Suras earlier this year, we talked about the fact that with artificial intelligence, you used to have to tell it what it could do. And I think one of the things we learned in 2023 with generative AI and its power was it's really cool, but it's almost so capable, you almost don't know where to start. And its limitations are so boundless, it almost needs to be reined in. And that's some of the stuff I saw happen over 2023 as generative AI picked up steam. It was like, man, we could use this just about anywhere. But the problem is it's so wide, we almost need to refine it for it to be really effective. Because if we don't, it's just pulling in so much information. It's so widespread. It's not actually being all that helpful because it's overly generic. It's overly split out. So we're going to see the rise of these hyper specialized generative AI GPT bots. And I'm already starting to see them. If you've seen it, Josh Burson launched one for HR specifically. There's another one. I'm trying to remember what it is. Chris Rainey and Matt Burns and team are in the process of it. And I'm involved in kind of advising on that. I think we're going to see that in a lot of different areas, which personally, I think this is going to create a lot of noise in early 2024. It is going to get overwhelmed. Just like when the pandemic hit, there was almost this surge of virtual tools that just hit, and everywhere you looked, everybody had a virtual platform for this, and there was a virtual tool for this, and all of a sudden you just went, oh my gosh, how do we make sense of this noise? I think we're going to see the same thing happen in 2024. We're going to see the rise of these hyper customized AI bots. You can buy an AI bot for this. It's hyper specialized in this and that. And that is exciting. But here's the but part that has me a little bit, I don't know what word is, cautious as I watch out on this. I still think we need to really be careful how much trust we put in these. No matter how specialized these bots get. And I'll give you a perfect example. I have a GPT that I have trained 100% on basically every piece of content I've ever created. And I've hyper specialized it to listen to how I talk, think about the way I think about things, listen to the kind of content I've created. And it is designed to think and act like I would. And I will just tell you right now, when I interact with it, it does not, I can just tell, I've asked it questions and it gives me answers. And I go, well, no, that's not really how I would do it. And I've asked it to do specific things that I would normally do. And I still have to edit and revise it, even though it has been 100% trained on everything I do. So I really would encourage people to exercise caution and discernment as these AI bots start coming out of the woodwork. And they are going to be making a lot of promises. They're going to be writing a lot of checks that I am convinced they're not going to be able to cash. And so I just think we need to be careful. Do I see tremendous potential for them? You will probably hear me talk about them more in 2024. I think there's so much potential, but I think we need to be really careful how much trust. And if you're one of the people who is considering doing some of this, the number of pilots and opportunities I've been invited into to say, hey, Christopher, we can help you create a bot that you can then commoditize and make money off of and all this other stuff. I am very much cautious and hesitant in some of these things. One, because I've experimented with this and seen how inconsistent it is, but also we have not really delved into the legal implications of recommendations and actions taken by artificial intelligence. And I don't know that we've swam yet in the waters of who's really accountable for the actions and the decisions AI makes. And I think there are going to be people who are going to learn the hard way in 2024. I think these custom AI bots that promise to be able to take care of all these things for you, that can deliver on all these promises. What happens when it doesn't deliver? Who do you go after? Who's really at fault? Is it the person who asked the AI bot? Is it the AI bot? Is it the company that built the AI bot? Is it the developer who trained the AI bot? I think this is one of these areas that we have not even begun to shave into this. And so while I'm extremely excited about where some of this custom AI, generative AI bots stuff is going, I think we also need to exercise wisdom and discernment in where we go. So before you get too excited, as you kind of close out your 2023 and prepare for 2024, may want to tap the brakes a little bit on this one. Okay, well, that's all I've got for today. I did promise to keep these much shorter and hit on them higher, but if you have additional comments, questions, things like that, do please follow up with me. As I've said before, this is designed to be a more interactive component of my content. So I would encourage you to engage with these. And also, if there are trends or there's things you're hearing about that you're curious what my take is on it or where I'm at in terms of how I'm approaching it, I would highly encourage you reach out, send them to me on LinkedIn, comment in, and I will add those to the queue of things that I will talk about in future weekly updates. So with that, I hope you have a wonderful 2 remaining days of your December and a fantastic kickoff to 2024. I will see you next